Okay, so I guess most of us are back from the break. Our lab is not very long. I think we might have in Linux, whenever that you use application, just make sure you update. But I think in this case, we have to do an upgrade as well for the version because the application might be written to a certain version. So we're gonna do static code analysis in this particular lab. Now you can do this on any DB in Linux. It doesn't have to be Kali, right? So because we're using Kali, most of you have done this many times for every lab session. We're gonna visit the website, download your virtual machines. So click recommended, click the VirtualBox one because that's the application we use to play. Download this virtual machine. Once that's downloaded, make sure we save it to the downloads. Make sure we right click, show more options, 7-zip, and extract. After we extract, we're gonna open up the virtual machine folder, its subfolder, and then, click the blue file to play. And I already have it playing, so this is what you see. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about what static code analysis is. I think we have a brief description of it in the lecture. Sorry, give me 1 second. Let me get to my Zoom bar. I forgot caption, so. Okay, so in this section, it talks about static code analysis. For part A, it is a good way for us to maybe just go through using a tool, looking at the code, and to fix some of the problems. It is effective to a certain extent. There are some challenges, but what it does is it's the application that we use, it's going to read it line by line, just like how you would manually read each line and check for syntax error or potential error for that programming line, right? So we would use a tool to automate that process, but this tool is going to use syntax tree or AST, and it's going to look that up. And so basically it's looking for syntax that would be adequate or not, right? Like, for example, if I'm writing C++, it's looking for semicolon at the end for each of the statement. Or Python, we don't have to do that. So it's going to use the rules for the syntax for first part to look at it. It's simple. And then there are other rules that would be applied when you're using it. So one of the tools that we would see is called DLint. And DLint it would have a set of rules that would go through, and these are called linter to evaluate your code. Okay. So these rules are already set for the application, DLint, and you can go to their documentation and take a look. And this is a good tool if you're working with Python, right? And to evaluate. There are different type of tools for languages, and there are some that will work with multiple. So how it works is it uses a thing called Flake 8. And this is going to be used to parse, right, for syntax for Python. So as you know, Python is a language that you must indent for its block. So if you don't have indentation, it's going to throw. And then white space does matter, so it does check some of that. Okay. Now, it would also use, so here it talks about arbitrary code. That means that they would just use some type of code so that way it can perform certain type of action to cause issue for your application, or open a reverse shell and install malware and so on, right? And so in security, we would see that code can be used, injected into our code or modify our code to create some security issue, like storing some silent logs, adding more payload, and so on. So we need to make sure that we have integrity in our code and secure our code. So once your Kali is up, log in. Then once it's loaded, your desktop is loaded, you can go ahead and open your terminal. So before I start install DLint here, I'm gonna go ahead and do a sudo app update, put in the password. I didn't put that down for the step, but run the update, and then you can do an upgrade. So update allows your virtual machine or your Kali Linux to update its software versions, right, including the OS, and then upgrade it for the OS version. And then it's saying that it's going to do all of these. So we're going to say yes for the upgrade. Or you can do sudo app update space -y, which allows it to plug in the yes. So you don't have to type it later. So this is going to take a few minutes. So let's take a look at this next few steps. Now, Ubuntu or Kali or Debian Linux, out of the box, you already have Python 3. I believe it's 3.9 now. It used to be 3.8. So that comes equipped with the OS for Debian Linux. So with that, you are going to use the pip, which lets you install DLint. And this is Python package is what pip is, right? So when you install code, but you install application, but using the code, especially Python code, you would use something like pip. In Windows environment, it doesn't have Python right away. And even if you install Python, if you install successfully, right, you can install the pip or update it. So pip command is intended to be used with the Python, and because it's Python package. So you can install the application using the pip. Before you've seen like git or wget. So git just pull down from the repository, but pip, basically we can install a Python application with it. So I'm still at 14% now, right? We want to be at 100%. So once you have DLint, you are going to use an editor to create your program. Okay. And here, when I put the note here, it's important that you read this. Make sure that there are white space after the commas and before the equal sign, because if you don't, right, it's going to check error. Indentation in Nano uses 4 space. So if you hit tab, that's not okay, right? I know it's annoying that you have to hit space 4 times instead of using tab. Well, now if you copy and paste this, make sure that you fix the white spaces that's stated here. Okay. Copy and paste doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to match up the white space. So make sure that we check to make sure that it's the proper space. And then the space after the comma. Now in programming in Python, it's forgiving. So no space or space after the comma, which is the separator operator, it's fine. But in this, using DLint, it's going to look for those things. So this is a program that I took from my CIS40C class, and I think this is one of their activity too. But we are going to import in a library called Pickle, and we are going to this is like an array, but it is called a list in Python. We're gonna put all of these strings, master string, second string Python, third string security, into a list, a container, and we're gonna name it object list. And for Python, right, we would use with open, it's very similar to, it is a loop. We would say with open data.pickle wb as file, right? We're gonna dump, we're gonna do a dump for that. So we're gonna execute a dump function or a subroutine from pickle, right? So we are gonna pull the function from this library, and we're gonna bring down each of these strings and pass it in here. Okay. Then once you're done, you're gonna execute using flake8 and your file. So this part, basically, it is the coding part, right? And if you're testing, you just install the program, make sure the file is in your system. Once you have DLint, you just do a flake8 and then test the file. And this tool is used for Python, right? So this is why we're writing the code in Python. So hopefully this is. Now, if you copy and pasting, just make sure that your characters also represent, because sometimes going from a Word document into Nano, it might not interpret quotation mark or other things accordingly. So we want to make sure if you're getting error, if it doesn't work, try to retype some of those things. Okay, let me check. Okay, so going. Any questions? And if you want to run this, right, you would do Python-M and then the file name, so you can execute it. Python is in Linux, and you can also do that with Java, but you can run everything directly from the terminal. Okay, so why is that important? Well, most servers don't have desktop, so you just have to use the terminal directly. And, you know, you will have to test application on application server through the terminal. Okay. So as you go through, you would see that flake8 is used. So DLint uses flake8 in the back. So you will have flake8. After you install it, you can find statistic information. And if you want more information, you can go there to look up. Now, if you want it quiet, it's going to be less verbose. That means just less display in text. And then you can also count up the error. So the steps kind of walk you through on how do you go about using DLint to run code, static code analysis for an application called test1py, I'm sorry. And then looking at the error. Now on step 10, you can use the name of your file, but if you want to use a wildcard like the asterisk, it just say that it's gonna run tests for all the Python file, right? So when you do it this way, if you have a bunch of Python file, it's gonna run all the tests. But if you want a specific file, you can plug in the name instead of the wildcard, the asterisk symbol. So if you have a bunch of files, you can see which one is insecure. You can just do the file extension, which is py, Python. Okay, don't forget to update and upgrade at the beginning in case And then you, on the second one, while we wait and you guys are working, you're gonna use Pylint. And Pylint check errors for the code. It's gonna enforce coding standard. And they call this code smells. And so it's gonna look at some of the issues with the code. Now, very similar to DLint, it also uses Flake 8, but it incorporates PyFlakes and MyPy. So these are some of the subtool that is already incorporated with this particular tool. So the style, the default coding style, so the rules that are applied to Pylint is close to what we see with PEP 8. I put some user guide information here, and that could change time to time. So there are things that you can do to enable or disable messages. And it talks about that here. You can manage some configuration through the conf file or the configuration file. And the config file is called this. And so again, we're going to do a pip to install Pylint. The program that we wrote in the last piece, we're going to execute it with Pylint command. And then you are going to add the line, right? So I tell you here that after you run this, you're going to open up, you're going to do nano test1.py. And then you're going to add these lines to the program. So import should go into import, and then the container definition, you can put it at the top. And then this, you can put it later. So if it's running into error, you have to ask yourself, did the code make sense when you added it? All right, I'm good. So let's come back.
So finally, we can like test 1.py, right?
Yeah. So we're going to do a pip 3, install DLint. And then we're going to do a nano test 1.py. Okay, so we're going to do import pickle. Check. Let me see if I copy and if it's going to throw error. And then I just need to fix. So if you want shortcut, you can paste in the code and then just fix the indentation, right? Making sure that we have space after comma. There are white space after the commas and before and after the equal sign. Indentation in nano is 4. So I need to indent with open. I'm sorry, pickle. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So once you have that, right, you wanted to test it. We're going to do a Control X, press yes, and enter to save the file. Once you have your code and you want to run it, see if it runs into the problem. Flake 8, test1.py. So if it prompts you that, just go ahead and say yes and install. So it's pulling in the Flake 8 and PyFlake packages, you see? Yeah, so just say yes. Okay, so run the the file again. So here it tells me that my program has this issue. So it already analyzed it, right? Multiple spaces before the operator, multiple spaces after the operator, trailing white space, blank file at the end of the file. Now, if I want to fix that, I would go back and I would nano into the file. And then I would say, okay, I want to remove this. Oops. Let's try to see if I remove the space.
So we had to have the space.
Yeah. So I want, yeah, if you have to have the space, it's gonna throw an error. Let's try to reduce some of the space and see if it's still gonna do that. Okay, so let's see. So as you can see, right, I put the note there for a reason. So even if you change the comma, because it says missing white space after the comma, so you have to have the space after the comma. If you don't, it's just gonna tell you there's more error, right? So the whole goal in this is to check it and reduce this list as much as possible. So this uses the syntax tree, right? Remember we said that earlier? So it's only gonna look at the syntax. So how can I reduce the spaces after the operator? Well, if you look at your code, it probably meant this, right? You know that green, see how I put my cursor there? If it shows that, so you just need to backspace it back so that way it will be right next to your, whatever the last character is, your colon or your bracket. Control X. Let me double check. Okay, so we're good. Let me fix I give it a space again because I want to show you that it doesn't like that. Okay. So as you can see, right, we started with this and then we modify something, we have more, and then we modify, we have a little bit less. So as you go through, you can use this type of tool. I don't need you to be perfect, right? Ideally, we want to minimize a lot of these errors as much as we can. Oops, sorry. And then be able to give you less security issues. So once you have the flake, so you run this, and then let's do a statistics. So you can run the command with the added options. So it's still gonna give me the errors that I have, right? And then if you have insecure, it's gonna list that right here. One thing that it is executable is insecure, compile is insecure, white space before the colon, I didn't like that. Multiple spaces after the operator. So this gives you the overall additional details to what you've seen in the previous one. When you do a flake 8, just the file name, it simply just give you the error, but statistic give you more of how many errors, how many insecure problem, right? And then this line is too long and so on, right? That's just parsing with the syntax tree. Then we wanted to make it less verbose. So we would then do a Flake 8 quiet. And you can always look into the help for the option or their documentation. Okay. So I'm sorry, more verbose. So this gives you more details. It's looking at the extension. So it's working from the file in, and it tells you these things. Okay. Attribute use, bad SSL module use, bad requests, all of these things. So more details. Okay. Even the library that we use. Okay. Bad cryptography module attribute use. So for the developer, I said, okay, let's go back and rewrite some of that, making sure that we reduce this area, right? Because that's what's really the insecure part earlier really means. So the output from with verbosity, with quiet, the other one gives you the more summary, where this is going to give you a little bit more detail. So now we're going to do a count option. And with Flake 8, so we'll do Flake 8 dash count. So this also with the error, it's still going to give you the same set of errors that you had, but basically it count up the number of errors, right? Like what you've seen from before in the prior, but it's going to count it up. So earlier when we only ran it with the name, we only saw this part. But when you do the quiet, you saw a little bit more details for some of the additional library and function used type of error. And then when you do the count, it lists everything and it counts it all up. 201 for me. Yours might be more or less. It really depends on sometimes our syntax and things. So the last error for me is it's just a blank line at the end of the file. And then we would do a bug report. So Flake 8 -- bug report. So if you already took Python and you wrote a project for my class or something, take this and play with it, right? Plug your file in there and see if your program is good or not. It'll tell you. So here it tells you the plug-in version, all of these. So as you learn more about Python, you know that more of the compiled Python program or the library that needs to be compiled, it's called Python or CPython. It uses a C compiler to convert the program for the interpreter, for Python interpreter to C. So many of the Python libraries are C-based library, as you can see. That this is why you would see the implementation of CPython. And so it tells you some of the plugin. So when you see that, you would identify the plugins and you would research the plugins to see if those plugins generate vulnerabilities, right? Because plugin simply is just another set of codes for your application to work. So or sometime would be integration of other things like other program or the applications. And the version here, we want that out in the report so we can look at potential plugin issues. Any question? It's kind of fun, right? When it works. I'm sorry?
I think it's okay. It's okay. Thank you.
For number 10? Is it, did it say, it should say that on for your report. Oh, I didn't do that one, so I'll do that one for you. I only have one Python file, right? So it's gonna just check that one. Flake 8. File name is .p. So if you have 10 files, it's gonna, so you have to read this report. Where is it? Languages test. Character. Dangerous. Yeah, if you have a lot of Python files, it makes more sense to run this one. Okay. Yeah. If you read it, you'll find it too. So you can search for insecure. You found it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, so read the output, it will find the insecure. Yeah, you can do the search for it. Okay, so we go with that. Then I think I did Pylint. Oh, we just did the bug report. So now let's try Pylint. We would do a pip 3. So if you just do a regular pip in the system that has Python 2.7 and Python 3, a regular pip would just do the older version of the Python. But only if you only have Python 3 installed on that system, a pip would work for that particular version that install. So we don't use 2.7 anymore. That went away a long time ago because they stopped supporting it. So any Python that you use should be Python 3.x. And then we would do a Pylint test1.py. So it says not install. We're gonna install it. Yes. So after you install it, run the command again. And it gives me a 5 out of 10. I got 50%. I failed. Yeah, it's not bad. That's all, right? Sometimes you're like, oh, well, this program only got 20%. Okay, so it gives you some of the things on what to fix here. It's missing a module docstring, obviously, because Pickle, I don't have Pickle installed on my system, but I'm using the library called Pickle, so obviously that's an issue. So that's it right here, right? And then I'm gonna go ahead and edit my file. So after you tested it, take a screenshot, put down the score, the rating, and then we would do a nano test1.py. Bless you. So for import, we know this through 30A, but if you haven't taken it, the import statement should always be on the top. You can put it later in the program, but that's not a good practice. So one space out of, so Pylint .lint, and then import pickle, And then what you want to do is you want to define these container where the other container is after the pickle import statement. So hit enter, and then you can add these 2 lines. So I'm somewhat lazy right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and copy and paste it. And then you know that it doesn't like white space, so make sure we don't have too many extra line, right? In Python, yeah, if you can have a gap in between your code block or your variables, your container, that's fine. But when you do that static code analysis, you gotta make sure that it's like not too many white space. It won't like that. That's fine. So making sure I have all the things that I need. So this one should be in later in the line.
The nano test.
I didn't want that stuff. Control X. No, let me do that again. So we would do an import. Now keep in mind that when you save it realistically, if this is done real life, you need to save it with, as you edit, it needs to be a different version, right? And you would static analyze it. But I just have you save over test1.py only because out of convenience for you. But yeah, we would say, okay, we will go back and rewrite the program. So we would say version 1.1.1 and so on. And then I wanted to add the container. And then, so let me make sure I have no extra space. And then I wanted to run the ops after. So it tells me it didn't like that I had put it before the pickle. Like that's the wrong order for the place before. And again, my module is missing. It's not installed. And then, but I am improving, right? Like I'm at 2.14 starting from a 5. So you want to be closer to 10. So after this, I see that, you know, my Python, now I did put down over here that you can change it, that you change the name. So you save it as but you would do it as a version. So I had saved it under test1Pylint, but you can have a version number saved. Okay. All right. So now we are going to test another module function. And this is we're gonna do another program called test2.py. So we're gonna do a nano test2.python. And we are going to, this is how you would write well, this is not using the multi-process, but you would have a sub-process. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy this and you can type it. You know what this program does? Can you tell me what this program does? Those of you who took Python?
Zero the server.
You can tell. How many times does it ping? One, count one. It's gonna ping a server or a system called my server, and the IP address is, it's pinging itself. Yeah. So this is how you, so if I want to make this into a ping a death program, guess what I do?
Does it count to 100? Limit?
I can also make it, yeah, a while loop.
That's what-
While that communication is open, just keep pinging, right? And your destination, your target IP goes here, right? That's it. So whatever IP that you have here, it's gonna ping. How does, okay, so the ping comes from where? Which library do you think?
What processes?
Yep, sub-processes, because it needs to interpret this command, right? And then you pass it as a command argument.
So, 4 space bars. It's 4 times. I say that.
Yeah. You modify, you can change all of that and make it into, you can also ping and do other things, right? So this was a program that I took from my Python security class.
Yeah, we should look at this.
It's open, listen,
I just lost my mouse integration.
Step 15.
Okay.
The other copy is
We're gonna create a media
after.
Yeah, if you put after pickle, if you put it before sometime, it will say something. I think I have to reboot my VM.
Name it to this one.
Is it reboot? Yeah.
We name it to step 16.
Oh,
Look at step 16.
that's right. Linux. Okay, so once you created your test2, you can run your test2. I want you to run it as a Python file. So when you do this, it's gonna ping your system. It pings itself one time, right? So I put here that you will now likely receive the EOF error, which is used for Pylint standard error. Since the file is short, it will not fully assess the script. So Pylint is sometimes ideal for more longer programs. So if it's under a certain number of lines, you saw that DLint and Pylint works, right? It checks the number of lines. And so when it's under a certain number of lines, like 25 lines or 50 lines, it might create a standard error issue for the program. Okay. So what I want you to take away from this is that you would have a brief experience with having code analysis for Python, but using it a few times doesn't make you an expert, right? So you want to be able to test it, maybe use a different tool with a different language and be able to see how that works, okay? But definitely this, upon completion of this lab, what did you learn about static code analysis? Right? We talked about how it looks at tree parsing for syntax, how the static code it's looking at, and sometimes, you know, you can mention about white space or indentation. And why do we use DLint and Pylint for Python code analysis? Because they are created for Python language, and that you can go back and look at the description and all the information, right? It uses Flake 8 or PyFlakes, and that is really allowing you to evaluate the rules that are set for Python programming. And then what type of tools will you use for future Python coding analysis? Maybe use a dynamic analysis tool. You can research that, or you can use dynamic. But definitely this is good for even checking your own program when you write your scripts, right? Putting your own scripts in there and have it check it because your script could be insecure. So these tools give you an overall understanding of what the quality of your program based on how it's written. And then as you modify, you can retest it again. So, and as we go through the class, we want to update the list of things that we learn in the class so that way you can add it to your resume or your profile or whatever that you would use to obtain a security job. But this area is definitely in high demand. So if you want to be a code analyst for the security area, this is also good. Basically, application analyst. Security application analyst. All right. I think I don't need to record anymore. Zoom is crashing. Any question?
Please, your last script, please.
Okay. And this one, the pink one?
Yes.
Okay. If my system responds, that is. I think I still have nano test too on there.
With the arrow down, yeah, that and other stuff.
Def in severe. My server is 127. One underscore is yeah, if you get an error, that's typical. Key open. That's a class object. It's false. We're gonna print thing. Secure. And then for the pilot call, we would do pilot std out. Because that's a C thing, right? Pilot. Score standard error. Extra space there. Lint dot py underscore run. And this is so we don't have a module name .py, so we would do a pilot run. What do I plug in here?
A test.
Yeah,
Good.
test two, that's correct.
I-
Return underscore standard is true. Okay. No, I think that's good. I'm not missing anything, but we'll see. Control X, yes, enter. Oh, my server is,
not in-
oh yeah, this is just indentation.
the three after the so function.
This is the function, and then return is part of that. Control X. Name error lint is not defined. Did you mean Pylint? Let's go back and fix it. Sorry, I can't see. Hmm?
So
Yeah, so I think what happens is it cannot find the. We have to look into the module for this. It's not there.
So in documentation, it says, to use, let me show it to you. Okay, there it is. Something like this over here, which is, from P1I import it as LTN. But if you go into the CD of, the font, sorry, plint, you'll find that lint is lint. There is no EPY lint.
Yeah, sometimes their documentation is funky too.
Yep.
I remember reading that lint is there. But it's just, maybe it's because of the newer version and maybe they buried it somewhere.
The issue that's running into is PY underscore
Run.
That's the main.
Yeah, so this function is maybe not in the Pylint. You know? So, or they might have relabeled it or rename it as instead of underscore run, it might be Run.
These are the ones available. I don't know, you want to choose.
Yeah, but you have to read the code, I think, to
Yeah,
get the
that's-
functions. It's able to have. But can you do pilot.lint like this? Like what we done before? In place of that? I think you can do that. I think you can do that. Let me see. What is that? Pilot.lint, right? And then dot run with a it's a yeah, it's a class object.
That did not run on mine.
Yeah, it's still stuck on, so interpreter, it's stuck on that line, so it can't go through and check the rest. So even if Give me a second, let me go check there.
Run.
Huh?
Run under. Let me try it.
Oh, I'm sure, because I'm not gonna be finished with it.
So it's further in
Oh, so. I'm
with
not doing it
highlights
right.
dot run
I feel like I
under
could do the whole
under
thing.
slash highlights. So using this one over here. I can invite into another area. That's,
Yeah, I got 4.2 points.
I mean, maybe we just got so bad in object as a girl.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I'm sure it's a basic zero, but-
When I,
Oh,
uh,
That's weird.
so
Mm-hmm.
I remember this being like, I think it's because of the fear.
I thought it didn't do anything. Or not mostly, I was like.
Fear and terror for. And I think that I'm not too familiar with finding myself.
The zero score, no, I don't think.
That's what you're saying. Something that could be a high score.